Very welcome to this new episode of Off to 7000 Island. Today we talk about AI. My name is Eric and now I'm living in the Philippines and I run a hotel with my wife together. But I'm a psychologist and my focus in psychology was media psychology and the perception of AI. And that's why we're gonna talk about AI today, because I think it's a bigger problem than climate change and global warming and all this kind of stuff, which lots of people are talking about. The governments are talking about it, you know, they do a lot of greenwashing and all this kind of stuff, but the governments, the Western governments, they don't talk about artificial intelligence, and that's, in my opinion, a huge mistake. So it's not about, we don't want to talk about how machine learning and other AIs work and all this kind of stuff. This is, for me, interesting, but that's not the topic of this video. Here it's about, I want to share a little bit of my research and why I think the AI could be so dangerous, but also why I'm actually using AI on a regular basis, consciously, not just I'm using some app and then there's AI in it. No, but consciously I'm using AI because it has some great potential, but it has also some failures. And, you know, thinking a bit about certain things, then also about the jobs and this kind of stuff, what it will do to our jobs, and also, of course, surveillance. We cut that in the end a little bit. We just go there in the end.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Just my first point, my research on this. So my master thesis is not published yet, so I can't go like crazy into detail, but one of the things we did was we developed for different tests and questionnaires for AI and what people think about it, what they know about it, all this kind of stuff. And it's quite scary how little politicians know about AI. And that's really the big thing. So the general population, okay, maybe they don't know much, but politicians should know much more because they need to act now. And they're not doing it. They're talking about climate change and all this, I mean, a lot of other things which, if we destroy our societies first, then there's no matter of, changing our energy sources, which is important too, but it's just, there's something I think more important, and politicians don't see it because I guess they're too old, they don't understand the topic. And the people who are behind big AIs, of course, they want to make money, and money, in some way or another rules the world, so they have a lot of influence. But that was quite scary to see, and to see that actually no one really thinks a lot about AI, but it's really dangerous. And the Western democracies, they don't do anything about AI. Like really, I mean, they have some ethics committee and stuff, but if you look to countries like China, which is using AI a lot, they're also regulated like crazy because they know how dangerous it can be if it's not them who are using it. So that's like, that should be an indicator. And when people from the CEO from Google or Elon Musk and from the Boring Company and ChatGPT and those people say like, there's some really scary things going on, and we might be in a race for destruction, basically meaning that, of course, most of the companies have some ethical consciousness, maybe besides Amazon, that they actually think like, okay, not everything in AI can do, we should actually want in our society. Or if in AI learns from humans, then, well, humans are not that great, if we are honest to ourselves. And there's lots of potential for bad abuse from people using AI to manipulate elections and to manipulate information in generally, like deep fakes. When you make a video, just you can't tell them apart anymore and all this kind of stuff. So it's really already in our lives, and it will become quite more dominant. So the whole fake news debate and all this kind of stuff will get a whole new dimension, because when you can't trust pictures anymore, then that's gonna be even harder to distinguish information. So, and that's why lots of sort of more authoritarian countries, they think a lot about it, and they make regulations because they know how scary it is, because they're also using it in order to survey, for example, their people and whatever they want to achieve. So, and that's a bit of my background in research, and also why I think it's so scary, because our governments are not really thinking about it. In social media, you see it all the time. I mean, how many documentaries on YouTube I get suggested and all this kind of stuff. And it's really it's very present, but the important people who should think about it seem to be not thinking about it. And I just thought like that's really important also to talk about. And the other thing is that I do work with AI. We work with AI to get things done quicker, like accounting and all this kind of stuff. So it's small companies have to use it as well. And I can only tell you, if you have a small company, you should use it as well. I mean, we are a small holiday resort in the Philippines, and it makes our life so much easier. But it has also implications for the jobs. And, we had industrial revolutions before, and we can actually tell what a disaster they were. And especially the industrialization, that meaning the steam engine and then the factories and everything which came with it, was such a disaster to experience for the people about 150 years ago now. And out of it grew 2 world wars, basically, with the technology which was then possible. So it's, that was kind of a disaster, and especially for the people, because like people got into new jobs, the farms died out, everyone moved into cities, blah blah blah, all this kind of, and it changed our society. And yes, it generated more jobs in the end, but that was after many years of figuring out stuff. After many years, people died in factory because they had no protection whatsoever for work safety and all this kind of stuff. So it wasn't great, and now we earning the fruits, our generations, the last 4 generations maybe. And with AI, I think the difference is even more drastic. Okay, less people will actually die, but less people will actually find a new job. Because what AI does, it's not just replacing basic jobs like, okay, now we have a lawnmower and don't need 3 people who are cutting the grass in our garden or something like this. But it's actually like it's replacing office jobs, which is the backbone of most Western countries and probably most countries in generally. And it's replacing them, and then also can replace the jobs which create AI. And that's like the thing, like in the past, when you have machines, okay, then we need someone who builds the machine. But what is if the machine gets built by another machine, gets planned by another machine, and so on? And there's no more human involved. The only human who owns money is the one who owns the whole thing. And that's really where, in my opinion, the danger lies. We need to figure that out. I mean, how do you think Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and co got so rich? Because they actually don't need to pay much labor, and the labor they have, they pay very little, and the rest is done by machines. So it's really just the beginning of that, and the companies cannot afford to slow down because someone else then will do it. Like if Amazon would decide, okay, now we act ethically and we pay our delivery drivers properly and all this kind of stuff, then someone else would come along and offer it cheaper. And that's the kind of spiral we're probably in the technology race in the private sector, and that could lead to crazy consequences. I mean, like, we are not talking about AI and then the Terminator and who knows what, but we're talking about a few people controlling huge amount of information and data and power in the private sector, and basically everyone else just needs to follow along. If we don't regulate it, if we don't figure out how we distribute the wealth which is generated from machines, then to the actually people who still need to live and all this kind of stuff. So and lots of people who I'm not against the AI, but I think there's more dangers than lots of people in the technology sector actually admit, that every industrial revolution also generates jobs again. Yeah, that is true, but if we think AI through and we use it to its full potential, then we just get rid of almost everyone in the production and planning scheme, because AI can do most jobs, and combined with robotics, and probably in the next 20 years do most of our jobs. So, and it's not just low labor jobs and things like this, like, I mean, Airbus is already flying airplanes as tests without pilots. So, like, this is one of the very good paid people, and generally pilots. So it will have a much bigger impact on our society than global warming, I think, because it comes so much faster and the development is so much faster. And that's why I compare it to global warming, because both are terrible problems, but one is actually something we can control. We really can control. I mean, we obviously failed with global warming, but we can still do something about the other thing because it's man-made. And there's a few more problems around it, but one of the biggest problems is that absolute surveillance can be achieved, and that's really scary. And there is countries like China who are using it already, social credit scores and all this kind of stuff. That's possible, of facial recognition by machine learning and surveillance of everything, every device, every electronic device, cameras and all this kind of stuff. And the people who say like, oh well, but we don't have to do anything to hide, well, that's a bit of a weak argument, because what is if you get on the wrong side of the government? You know, if you don't agree with your government anymore, and then they have all the leverage over you. And also, it's just a principle, we have a right on privacy, which could be easily taken away, because we can not employ that many people to watch all the surveillance cameras, but we can have a computer who watches it 24 hours, and there's no problem. He has to recognize millions of faces every second, for example, and that's just the beginning. So we really need to think about it, and we need to also prepare ourselves that there will be quite a big change, and that comes faster. And it's not like the introduction of the computer and or the typewriter or something like this. It's much deeper change, and it's probably much more comparable to the Industrial Revolution with the steam engine and the other petrol engine and all this kind of stuff than all the other industrial revolutions we think we had. They were just basically, the invention of the computer was just a little step, but what AI can do is massively different. So I wanted to talk about it. I know it has nothing to do with the Philippines, except that if you have a company in the Philippines, you should also look into AI, because your competitor will do it in some point. And also, it's just something on my heart, and I found it disturbing that everyone besides the people who really need to talk about it talks about it. So now I'm also one of those people who are talking about it, and I hope with our audience being a bit older and generally, that you may have learned something and understand a bit more. We don't go into details how machine learning, the AI basis right now, you know, deep language models and machine learning, how this all works right now. This, you know, like it's not that important on this grand scheme. I'm more concerned as a psychologist with how it affects us and our society. And on a personal level, yes, I do look into AI and how it works, and I found it interesting, but also interestingly scary. Okay, any more questions? No, only the annoying journalist in the back there. Okay, you? Yes, I do got one question, and this is about the government and its plan to deal with artificial intelligence and the potential job loss and the potential abuse from rich people using technology to get more wealth without sharing it out to everyone else. So basically, what's the policies and procedures and regulations the government wants to introduce in order to deal with artificial intelligence? Okay, by artificial intelligence you mean the algorithms who suggest naked women to me because I'm a man? No, that's not what I mean. That's an algorithm and it's not very relevant. But I'm talking about a technology which could make 90% of all jobs redundant for humans, and the few rich people are getting richer and richer while the poor are getting poorer and poorer because technology is replacing their jobs. It's about the potential absolute surveillance of governments and dictatorships of their people, and potential world domination by technology in that sense, and also that AI could potentially affect affect our democracies and basically destroy or make it almost impossible to get the right information for elections and things like this. So that seems to be a pressing danger for the governments right now, especially democratic governments right now should think about it. So what's your plan on this? Oh, for that AI, I don't have a solution, because I'm going in 2 years out of power and retire, so that's not my problem. That's for the next government to sort out. So you need to ask them later in 10 or 20 years maybe, then we might think about that a little bit more.
Defined in a single word. I was going to put him... Entschuldigung.